So I think that pilot program bills should contain certain specified provisions. Similar to bills that create or expand tax expenditure programs, TEPs, I believe that all pilot program bills should contain certain provisions. In my mind, pilot program bills should contain evaluation criteria and a sunset date, among others. They should also contain findings and declarations and intent statements by the legislature. Now, California, like most other states, occasionally establishes a pilot program, which is basically a temporary program established by statute. And the idea behind a pilot program and a bill specifically creating one is to give a public policy proposal a try, if you will. And as part of this effort, there's usually a collection of data and a determination whether this temporarily adopted program is meeting perceived expectations and therefore should continue or not. Now, in some instances, a pilot program includes a formal study, perhaps even with an independent third party conducting data collection, evaluation, and reporting, perhaps even with a recommendation. There may be oversight to ensure that the program is being implemented as intended so that a proper evaluation can be made. So, a pilot project or program is a short term statutory program used to evaluate perhaps an entirely new or innovative program or operation. As part of that evaluation, every pilot project bill should be required to include an evaluation based upon specified criteria, a study in order to review whether the criteria were met, and a report back to the legislature along with a sunset date. A pilot program's evaluation criteria should be similar to that which is contained in Revenue and Taxation Code Section 41. Section 41 requires any bill introduced after January 1, 2020 to contain specified information if the bill would authorize a new TEP. Section 41 requires the bill to include one, specific goals, purposes, and objectives that the tax expenditure will achieve. Two, detailed performance indicators for the legislature to use when measuring whether the tax expenditure meets the goals, purposes, and objectives stated in the bill. And three, data collection requirements to enable the legislature to determine whether the tax expenditure is meeting, failing to meet, or exceeding those specific goals, purposes, and objectives contained in the bill. So, like these criteria for TEP bills, I think it's best when a pilot project is established with stated goals, purposes, and objectives that the pilot project is intended to achieve. The reasons for the project, perhaps why this particular approach was chosen for the program. Certainly, costs associated with administering and complying with the program should also be reviewed. And then at the conclusion of the pilot program, a report should be required to be presented to the legislature in order for elected legislators to determine whether the pilot project met expectations, and if so, whether it should continue for another definite period of time or perhaps even be made permanent. Now, finally, in order to ensure, I think, the evaluation is done properly and it's well understood what the purpose of the pilot program is, a bill authorizing a pilot program should include both legislative findings and declarations, as well as legislative intent statements. That's because, in my view, they provide a very valuable basis for the pilot project. Generally, legislative findings and declarations are usually do set forth a factual basis or purpose for the proposed legislation, while legislative intent statements set forth the intent of the legislature, obviously. The findings and declarations should come first because they provide the basis for the bill's provisions and they're a precursor to the intent statements. In other words, the findings and declarations, as well as the legislative intent statements, set the stage for this pilot program. They also provide a basis for the evaluation criteria to be used in the study to be developed by the legislature. So, as a result, I think a pilot program should include in its bill legislative findings and declarations, legislative intent statements, evaluation criteria, required study and report, as well as a sunset date. And all of those provisions should be a part of each and every pilot program bill considered by the California legislature.